Let's open with a word of prayer. Father, it's been a busy week for many of us, and it's been a busy morning. Pray that we'd be able to just rest our hearts and our minds, and join together and have a good conversation about what you would call good. Lord, give us wisdom, give us insight, and help us to wrestle with this really important and sometimes challenging subject. Lord, thank you for your Spirit. Thank you for your word. Thank you for being among us. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. All right. Bo has officially corrected the clock. I hope that wasn't intentional. You know, some people set their clocks differently just to fool themselves. But that was slow, wasn't it?
It was slow, yeah.
That was slow, so that you wouldn't do that. Good morning. Hey, do me a favor. How many of you are in the room for the first time today? Good. How many of you? Actually, I'm not going to check on who has read their assignment from last week. I was walking up the stairs and I heard some people talking about it. I was like, wow, they read the assignment. That's great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a quick review of last week's lesson. We talked about how we are just inundated with ethical choices every day. We talked about what's the difference between the word moral and the word ethical. Although I concluded like this, although I want to live a moral life, I would rather be called an ethicist than a moralist. There's just a little bit of a tone to it, which you can sort out. And then we started talking about the difference between what I should do versus why I should do it. And the drill was our first scenario last week. The drill that I rented, and those are the actual steps, by the way, for those who are interested. It was a real story, and I did go back to Home Depot, and I made the choice to tell them that I had bent their bit, and the rest of it is just humor. And these are the finished steps. And it worked out okay because the young man behind the counter who held my life in his hand said, well, why don't you just go out and buy one, and we'll just put a new bit into the set and we're all good. Anyway, he still couldn't believe that I did not buy the insurance. He could not believe it. It's like, everybody buys the insurance. Not everybody. For today, we're going to move on to a new scenario, and the plan is to start looking at the answers why, and to start sorting those reasons that we give, because I think there's actually a pattern to the answers that we give, and once we sort them out, I think it's going to be very useful for us as we think through our own ethical positions and our own explanations of why we do things. And for those of you who did your homework, we're going to weave in C.S. Lewis's suggestion, because he suggests a framework. We're going to kind of settle on some categories, and then we'll look at a biblical example. And I have a feeling that's more than we're going to be able to fit into the next hour. So here we go. Here's the story. What should we do? I borrowed the story from this textbook, Exploring Christian Ethics. So give credit to Kyle Fedler. There's reality in the story, which we'll talk So here we go. And by the way, the The pictures are not the people in the story. As you can see in my footnote, they're just borrowed from the interwebs. So there were these two friends, Bill and John. They were two best friends. They grew up together in a little town in Ohio. They were friends from very young through high school. They both did pretty well in high school. They decided over the course of time that they wanted to study for a similar path. And so they applied to this particular Christian college. Bill had a girlfriend. She comes into the story a little bit later. Now, during orientation in college, they had to sign a pledge. And the pledge said something along these lines. It said, I pledge not to cheat and to report anyone who did cheat. Now, are you skeptical about that? I taught a class at SPU and I used this story, and this is the textbook from that class. And I had several students who said, this is in the graduate program. They said, yes, I went to an undergraduate Christian college and I had to sign a pledge like that. You signed a pledge that you would report if you knew someone was cheating? Yes, that was the pledge. So it's a real thing, okay? Just in case you're wondering. So Bill and John, they plan to become doctors, and they're going to save the world, okay? So at this point, as undergraduate students, they're both in a pre-med program. And it's pretty rigorous, and there are certain points in the program where if you don't make it, you're asked to leave the program. So they're working hard. And remember, they're pretty good students, and they are college roommates, and they're studying together. Just before midterms, Bill starts to have trouble. His father has a massive heart attack, and his father is in a different state, so Bill's mind is thinking about him, and he gets a letter from his girlfriend. This is a little bit ironic. By the way, when I told this story in a high school classroom, my high school students did not know what a Dear John letter was. You don't know what a Dear John letter is? And it's kind of interesting because John is the friend, but Bill gets the letter. Okay. I get amused easily. So Bill, he's thinking about his dad, and then he gets this letter from his girlfriend, and his girlfriend is like, I didn't sign on for a long-distance relationship. Bye-bye. So they're taking a class called Organic Chemistry. How many of you have ever taken organic chemistry? Hard, right? I have never taken organic chemistry, so I cannot relate. But from my siblings and others who I've talked to, it's a killer. It's required for this pre-med program, and Professor Williams is really strict. And boy, the internet gives you great images, doesn't it? He's smiling. He shouldn't be smiling. Anyway, they're taking this test. Remember, Bill is distraught. Right now, he's studying for this midterm, and those who fail the test are eliminated from the program. And the test comes, and it's very hard. And as Bill and John are exiting from the class after the test, they both say, "Yeah, I think I did pretty well. I think I did pretty well." That night, the story says, over a couple of beers, which I always found interesting for such a strict Christian university, that they'd be back drinking beers. But so after a couple of beers, Bill says, "John, can I confide in you? Can I tell you something?" "Yes, you can tell me anything." "I brought some notes into the test. My mind has been on so many other things that I needed some help on this midterm. John says, "You cheated?" Okay, the soundtrack. Dun-dun-dun-dun. But Bill says, I'll never do this again. You know that, I'm a good student and I've never done anything like this, and I'll never do anything like this again. The next day, John gets a call from Professor Williams. Professor Williams says this, and I have to read it as it's written in the story because it kind of gives you parameters on what your answers can be. The next day, John was called into Professor Williams' office. The professor said, "I know that you're good friends with Bill. I suspect him of cheating on the midterm. He has denied it. Do you know anything about it?" What do you do? You're John. What do you do? You want to talk among yourselves? Go ahead. Decide. What do you do?
Well, I'd like to know what
For me, there's no other. You sign your class.
You
don't need that.
I don't know what I would do.
The number gets the personal story thing. You must know about the dad.
Oh, they have no. I don't think I would.
Yeah, I think I should your friend.
So, do you stand, as it's called, give praise?
Yeah, I agree. I kind of see it.
You did that.
Should do.
Even if, I think even if you have, say to the professor if I were.
Now, I suspect that you're all going on to the next question, which is, what would you do and why? So we'll do that in just a moment. There's two choices. The way the story is written, you have to go with the way the story is written, okay? When he says, "Do you know anything about it?" It's kind of like a yes/no answer, right? So he's either going to tell the truth and turn his friend in, or he's going to say no, and he's going to lie, and he's going to cover for his friend. So, for those of you who missed this little piece last week, I'll say this again. When I did this for a number of semesters, the same story in a high school classroom, I personally was surprised at how many students were willing to lie. And what I did was I had students raise their hand. And then I shared last week that I had this great epiphany during the pandemic when I took this class online and students could vote anonymously. So when they voted anonymously, I suddenly had a majority of truth tellers. They were going to turn their friends in. And I realized that putting students out in front of one another and saying, I basically was saying, how many of you would throw your friend under the bus? How many of you would be a snitch? And students were like, I'm not going to answer that. Every semester there was a student who was like, I will stand up for the truth. But most students publicly I was giving them a very strong disincentive, to be honest. All right. I suspect if we took a poll that most of you would say, yeah, I would tell. The real question, though, for this class is, why? Why do we give the answers that we give? So can I collect some of those from you?
So I did not go to a Christian college, but we had an honor code like this, and it was pretty well enforced.
Yeah, okay.
And so it's not hard for me to put myself in this position. But for me, it would go back to that conversation the night before. And I would have heavily leaned on my friend to turn himself in. And I would have reminded him in that conversation, we signed this thing, and if I'm in this position, like if you don't turn yourself in, I am bound to turn you in because of this thing. And because of that, it's an easier, like I have a clearer conscience about how to handle the situation because I've already done that work up front.
Let's see, how can we summarize that? As a little bullet point, I would turn him in because our relationship, I've already spoken the truth to him. Something like that. Yes?
I mean, I think part of that answer is also there is this pointing to this external source. So it's not your decision, but you are, feel coerced and compelled into that situation. But that leads me to my reason for lying, which is not seeing that external document, that contract is legitimate. Because, I have qualms with the idea that it's, for some reason, my responsibility as an equal, as a fellow student, to turn other people in. It should be on the professor and on the administration,
Yeah.
It could be seeing that contract as illegitimate, as a reason to protect your friend in that situation.
So you're saying, so is the contract legitimate or not legitimate?
Well, if you're telling the truth, it's clearly legitimate, and if that's your reason. But, my reason that I'm putting forward for the lie would
Yes.
be seeing the contract as illegitimate.
To push that one further, and what if the president of your university, perhaps maybe,
Spelling, did you notice how I like, illegitimate, the word is illegitimate. Oh, this is on camera.
I was just saying, what if the leader of your university actually violated that code? Right, just to make that more complicated, right?
So we're gonna weave into the story, we know that the leader
You go to a
has,
fancy school on the East Coast, right?
Harvard would it.
okay. Inconsistent leaders, yes.
One thing I'm struggling with is why didn't the professor just go straight to Bill in the first place instead of bringing John into it?
He does, he did, and what he says to John is, I suspect Bill of cheating, he has denied it.
Oh, he's denied it, that's right.
Yes. So Bill has already cheated, and he's also lied. Yes.
Well, Bill has put John in this really difficult position by lying and then lying again. So if he hadn't done it in the first place, none of this, and if he had abided by the code that he promised he would abide by, none of this would have happened.
So this leads you to,
Well, it would be because both of them took this oath and it's been in force, and I would be reluctantly telling the truth. Of course, the answer to the question was, do you know anything about this? So I guess I could just say yes and leave it at that, but.
yeah, but you know it's gonna be followed up.
Yeah.
So Bill lost his integrity by his actions, and so therefore,
And put other people in the position of having to make that decision.
John.
I mean, it's ultimately a question of where your allegiance is and why, right? Even when you ask your students to
Yeah.
raise their hand, you're
Right.
forcing them to choose between whether I'm going to make my friend feel okay about our friendship in
Mhm.
some way, if that would have been a threat to the friendship, to please you, you know, in some way, I want him to think that I am a person of integrity, internal alignment, right? Like, am I a person who would do this, and is that okay with my own moral code? And then externally, they're in a Christian school, obviously God has something to do with this, so.
So-
you're kind of looking for where's that alignment, which one's gonna win?
I could put allegiance on either side.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could put allegiance on either side. Yes.
So there is the third option of saying no comment. So basically, you're not, you are in that way having allegiance with your friend. And you're able then, at that point, to like, you're open to suffering the consequences for yourself, but you're not indicting your friend in that situation.
Okay, no comment.
That's the approach that I would take too. I would say no comment, let me go talk to him first, and then I'd take similar, please go forward, otherwise I'll have to go forward for you.
Yeah, okay. No comment. By the way, one of the popular approaches to this, at least in the high school classroom, was students would look for a way out. Like, I'm gonna go into that office and I'm clever. I can not answer this question. And I'm like, yeah, look at that face. You are gonna answer this question. Yes.
Well, so one truthful answer that, so one way out, I guess, is maybe to say something like, I do not see any direct evidence of cheating. Because
Yes.
after the fact, incorrect, you know, so kind of a politician, it's like, I'm not exactly answering the question, but I am.
To me, the complaint on denial. I like that.
You do? You like that?
I didn't see him cheat.
I didn't see him cheat. Yeah.
I think another thing John needs to consider is that not only is he gonna destroy his own integrity,
Yeah.
but his friendship also. Because now Bill has to understand, if you're gonna lie for me, there's a great implication and possibility that you will also lie to me. So that trust is kind of just, it's huge.
Yes. Where is the friend I grew up with? I love qualitative research, and I love to gather data, and so I've gathered some data. I realize that this is really tiny. I've actually reduced the list by combining common answers. These are answers that my students gave me for the truth side over the course of about 7 semesters. And these are the I'm going to tell the truth. I'm going to turn you in.
I love karma up there. Your religion teachers need to.
I'm sure I said, how does that work? If I turn, wait, I think karma appears on both sides. So, I love this one too. What would Jesus do? Wait a second, is Professor Williams wearing that little bracelet? Let me point something out, because what we're doing now is probably not going to answer the question for you. It's not. I'm not going to give you the answer. Remember, I'm not a moralist. Although I can tell you what I answered my students when they said, "Well, what would you do?" But we're starting to look for patterns, and I want to point out a couple of things on this page. And one is this: 9 times, it's the most common answer as to why we would tell the truth, which was you signed a pledge. Who mentioned that external document?
Oh, I was gonna say, it was Ben. I mentioned the external force. You mentioned external.
Okay. So, okay. See, many of you have already gotten to this point. There's something out there that says it's it's not me, we signed this contract. The contract is legitimate. And so, and there are other answers on this page that, let's see, where are the Ten Commandments? The Ten Commandments, God's Word says, okay? Again, this is something outside of me that determines what I would do. Let me see if there's another answer on this page I want to point out. Yeah, another type of answer is what's going to happen if. The what's going to happen if kind of answers. And I could have bundled all of these into like just students said 9 times, if John lies, he could suffer consequences, get caught, get in trouble. He can also get kicked out. And there are other answers throughout this. So keep in mind those 2 types of answers, the appeal to an outside source, and then the appeal to what's going to happen. All right. So these are the answers from I'm going to tell the truth. Anybody see one that you want to ask about or point out before I move on? Yes.
Not exactly your question, but I wanted to ask if you pulled the same scenario without the contract, and to see how people would respond. You know, they hadn't signed, saying to turn them in, but it's still the right thing to do.
I didn't. Yeah, that would be a good test, because that adds a different dynamic. That story that you're asking about is, do you return the shopping cart at the supermarket? There's no contract, but anyway.
Well, I was just thinking that if John does say yes, he lied, he's also risking expulsion because he knew about it, but he didn't report it. Mm-hmm. So they're both out.
Yeah. At that point, it's the next morning. He could make the case that I was on my way. I was on my way when I got your summons to come here. Yes, Sam.
I think a case for lying is that, at least in my experience at business school, a lot of the people in the Greek system have access to resources that most people don't have. So you can get previous exams or homework or even answers on tests. And so when everything's graded on a curve, if you're not cheating, you're not getting an A sometimes. And so it's like, okay, if everyone's cheating, or the vast majority of people are cheating, just to stay on average, I need to cheat.
Wow. 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 Okay. Let's look at some of the answers that students gave why they would lie. So it looks like this. I love the first one. Admire cheating as a skill. It's like, in a classroom, I'd be like, who said that?
Do you mind reading a few more, because we can't see it?
I'm gonna point out, I think, 1 or 2 on this page. So here's the type of answer that you should pay attention to. Remember, we talked about an external authority. We talked about what will happen, what are the consequences, and then a third one is my heart. I just feel so bad for Bill. So there's a number up here, and 7 times students appealed to, Bill has just had a horrible time. His dad, his ex-girlfriend. Come on, give the guy a break. I am not going to put him through more pain. And so there are a number up here that have to do with not causing more pain and having empathy. I think the word pity is up there, well, somewhere, but I think pity and empathy are different. But it's it's like my heart hurts for this guy, and do I really want to do more to him? And here's another kind of answer that you'll notice on this page, and it's this: loyalty. I have my priorities, and I love this guy. I grew up with him. I love this guy. I can't be the one who smacks him down.
We had, it didn't get written, but we talked, you mentioned allegiance would be on both sides of this,
Yes,
which allegiance and loyalty are
yes,
same.
yeah. So, the request for me reading more, I'm gonna stick with those. I can read more if you want, but for the purpose of where I'm directing this lesson, we've got 3 buckets right now, and I'm actually going to make the case that those are the 3 buckets. That those are the 3 buckets that moral reasoning falls into. There's an outside authority. I'm going to weigh costs and benefits, or I'm going to go with my heart. You'll have a chance to evaluate that and to see if you think I'm right or not. But that's actually going to be my premise moving forward. So guess what? That's why we read the C.S. Lewis article. He happens to suggest the same thing. So we're going to move forward and we're going to start to sort out these reasons. These are pretty cool. No, not useful, but pretty cool. Or maybe they are useful, because this actually is a word cloud from the list of why students would tell the truth. Signed, we're doctors, come on. Doctors can't cheat on tests. We made a pledge, I'll get caught. Friendship is pretty pronounced there. Lying, trustworthy, anyway, commandments. You'll see the kinds of things that we're looking at. And then for I'm gonna lie, friendship is bold, empathy is bold, loyalty is bold. And so you start to get a sense of what are the main themes in this. So let me back up just a moment. Actually, before I move on to the next thing, any other comments, thoughts, or questions about the scenario, about how we're sorting this out? Yes?
My only thought was the sequelae for telling the truth seems huge.
The what?
Like what's gonna happen if I tell the truth is huge. Like I might get expelled, Bill might get expelled, our friendship might be ruined. Whereas if you lie, it might just end right there in the office. So that's the only thing I can think about. But then you have to, I guess you have to live with your internal guilt. But it just seems like there's so many things, this path down one road of telling the truth. Seems like a lot of really bad things might happen, or hard things might happen.
Can you think of a case in your life recently where you have said, here's my choice, what's gonna happen? What will happen if I do this? I think it's one of the most common ways that I'm a big list writer. Like, here's pros and here's cons. That's what I'm doing. I'm weighing two outcomes. I'm weighing my choices. Do you ever do that? Buying a car, buying a house, marrying someone, pros and cons. Yeah, it's a very common pathway for making choices. How common is the strategy of saying, what do the authorities say?
The higher authority can say.
A higher authority.
Authority that's God.
Yes. Or, what are the ratings for this choice? How many of you, do you know what I'm talking about? Like in the internet world, don't ratings rule? Like, oh yeah, this restaurant only got 2.5 stars. I am not going there. So we look at authorities like, people don't like this. I'm not going there. So yeah, we use all kinds of things as authorities, not always higher authorities. Sometimes it's peers. And how often do we make decisions based on our heart? I cannot do that I feel horrible. I can't do that to that person. Or we have other emotions that rule. So let's take a look at this. We're sorting these. We're sorting all of these answers and your answers into, as I said, 3 buckets. And here's the first bucket. Some reasons refer to an authority, either a person or a document. Sometimes it's formal, sometimes it's informal. Do you ever play a game? And someone says, hey, you can't do that. And it's like, pull out the rules. What do the rules say? And so you make the decision based on some authority of how this game should be played. What's another example in real life where you make an appeal to an authority?
What would your parents say?
Yes? What do your parents say? Mm-hmm. Other examples of where you appeal to an authority?
I mean, our denomination is set up this way.
Yeah? Yeah. What does the Book of Church Order say?
Presbyteries and courts and judges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In legal circles, there's this thing called precedent.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes the argument is that we should make the decision this way because that's what they did.
Mm-hmm.
These other cases similar to this, they decided this way.
Mm-hmm. Good, thank you. Yes?
Appealing to management or explaining a decision, well, management decided, my boss decided, I have no, especially in a customer service position.
Yeah.
This is policy.
I'm so sorry, this is out of my hands.
I put myself as the authority a lot with my kids. I said so.
I said so. Yes. By the way, there are going to be some tools for parenting in this. But why? Because of this. But why? Because of this. So you give how many reasons that have to do with cause and effect, and then finally you get to the answer that says, because I said so. Yeah. And then it's like, because I happen to be the authority. But why? God. God is the answer. All right. Second bucket. I am placing these in a particular order because the order becomes a framework, and it starts to make sense, and it's easier to remember if I use the same order. So the second bucket is some reasons of why we do what we do defer to the heart, to feelings, emotions, and attitudes. This is sometimes challenging to figure out what these things are, because we'll see that there's going to be a confusion. Often the answers we make with our heart have consequences. But what I'm going to suggest right now is let's just isolate the heart for a moment, okay? In real life, they're very, very tied together, but for now, it's like, what are you operating on? You're operating on the basis of love, fear, loyalty, empathy, pride. I mean, the list is so long. And in the story of John and Bill, guilt and trust and love and fear and loyalty and empathy were all at work in the answers that people give.
I find this one interesting because almost all of these cut both ways, whereas the authority one only cuts one way.
Good observation. Yes. Yeah. You could put love on both sides, couldn't you? Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, it's not that easy. It's very complex. There's a whole school of ethics that says, just do the loving thing. Wow. Just do the loving thing. I forget who said this. I'm wondering if it's C.S. Lewis, but he says, to tell someone just do the loving thing is like saying to a football team, he's in the UK, he's saying to the team, just play fair. Just go out there and play fair. And it's like, okay, how's that going to work out? We don't need any referees if everybody just plays fair. If everybody's just loving out there in the field. But yeah, it certainly can cut both ways. Other observations or comments? Yes?
It strikes me that, like, this is kind of the foundation, the heart for, like, liberal ideologies. That there's, like, especially the social ones that are pushed on us. Like, there's not an external authority, like a document or something necessarily. There's kind of an external authority now through consensus, but like, but there's, yeah, it's kind of like you need to love everybody. Like, love is love. Like,
love is love.
Go love people, and it's interesting to frame it this way because it kind of, if you're just floating in that pool of emotional, or like of the heart being the reason for things, like, it's hard to see that, like, that it cuts both ways, and that, like, there's not that there's not like an external authority there, because it kind of is spoken as if there is.
Yeah, yeah. Later on, we're going to have a scenario in a future week that involves love in a World War II scenario.
But it can also be the opposite. It could be fear for ultra-conservative ideologies where they're adding onto the Bible. So it isn't using just the Bible, but for our contract of how we live.
Yes.
But fear that our children will become this way, or our society will become this other way. And so we need to do things based on preventing because we have fear.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Yes?
I also would push back on the idea that someone who's arguing for the lying position isn't appealing to some sort of external authority. Because you can be appealing to, I mean, there are people that sign contracts or submit to certain authorities, but acknowledge that those authorities are illegitimate. And that's why even in our political system, the Supreme Court overturns precedent, because even though the precedent has an external authority, justices decide that that was wrongly decided. And so precedent has and does get overturned. And it's not a disrespect for the authority of the precedent, but it's acknowledging that there is a more legitimate legal reason. So I wouldn't say that those who are lying aren't appealing to some sort of external authority. It would be, again, seeing whatever authority is telling them to tell the truth as an illegitimate authority. or seen that there's a greater authority, that would then tell them to lie in that situation.
Thank you. Yes.
I went to a pretty rough high school, and if you snitch on the wrong person,
Yes.
you could be in real fear of getting hurt from other people. And so just when you said that, made me think of, okay, like what is your authority?
Yeah.
You know, and what authority are you going to? And if your authority is the toughest kid in high school, opposed to your teacher, you're probably not gonna snitch.
Yeah. Yeah. Earlier, I made the suggestion that looking at internet ratings was appealing to a type of authority. Your illustration is similar to that, but then you have to start to sort out, well, wait a second, is the person appealing to an authority, or are they appealing to a result, an effect that will be caused on them? Or is it in their heart? Now, it's probably all three, in a sense. I actually am going to make the case, as we move forward, we'll look at these three buckets and we'll say, what happens if you only focus on authority? What happens if you only focus on the heart? What happens if you only focus on results? There are consequences to those three actions. Then there are philosophers who just do A and B. And Nietzsche only does the heart and the results. And Kant only does the law and the motives. And I'm going to suggest, okay, I'm showing my hand, that you've got to do all three. If you get stuck on one, there are inherent problems. So some of these we can wrestle with them and say, okay, really, what's going on? Why did I make that decision? Did I make that decision because I'm afraid? Oh, okay. Do I care? How much do I care about my peers? How much do I care? Like, am I really going to let the interwebs rule when I choose a restaurant or a product? I don't know. So it's complex, and yes, there's always a combination of answers.
I was going to say something similar, in that how much of this category is derivative of the other two, because it's like your emotions are kind of your internal calculation without being explicit, but of what are the results going to be? Am I going to feel this intense guilt because I didn't obey God's command if you're looking at the authority, or am I afraid of the consequences of the bully who I'm snitching on?
Yes.
Just that these are kind of the internal.
And you'll see, I am not presenting a simplistic model. It's not complex.
I was just thinking, this is how my mind works, but when you're deciding what to do with Bill and the relationship you have with
Yes.
him, for all those who said they would tell the truth, what if instead of Bill, that was your wife or your husband? Would your decision still be to report it, or would that influence you a little bit more because the costs could be much greater? Just losing the friendship, now you're looking at losing a marriage, your wife or husband's, confidence, and would it make a difference?
Yeah. So the big example of what you're describing. Last year I read The Book Thief. So many great illustrations come out of World War II. Like, what do you do if you're hiding someone, if you're sheltering someone? Do you tell the truth? Okay. Yes.
Well, I think the one thing that I think we've kind of missed here, which keeps popping back in my mind, because one of the reasons to lie is the relationship. but the relationship has already been strained because,
Yeah.
you know, he did something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so he put you into that position where you needed to choose between lying and telling the truth.
Yes. But it wasn't his fault. I'm just playing.
And I think that's important.
Yeah.
You know, will the relationship survive even if you lie?
Mm-hmm. The first bucket I gave you was the bucket of authority. The second one was the heart. The third one is referring to outcome. Bill and John are going to save the world. I'll lose my friend. We'll be expelled. Which choice will produce the least harm? Which choice will provide the greatest good? So, and we've talked about this, so I'm not going to dwell on this. Now to the C.S. Lewis article. So C.S. Lewis, interestingly, presents 3 parts of morality, and we've got about 7-8 minutes left. So let me describe these, because I know some of you haven't seen that essay. I have copies if you'd like a copy before you leave today. Lewis says, and in his comfortable, popular way, he's great in the way he can express things. He says, the first part of morality is interpersonal harmony. And now I'm thinking, which of my 3 buckets would that fit into? Well, all of these ships are not bumping into each other because they're all, in a sense, obeying the rules of the road. They're all steering, they're all navigating properly. So these are rule followers. You can't have a convoy like that without them following some rules. Otherwise, they crash into each other. But then Lewis brilliantly says, yeah, but even to do that, he says you have to tidy up inside. And yeah, look at that. That's an engine room, I guess. I've walked through engine rooms, but they've never been that tidy. So Lewis has the sense of, oh, there's an internal thing going on. You have to sort out what you're feeling, what you're all about, and that will influence the decisions that you make. If one of these ships had a broken engine, it would no longer be in formation. You can't even do that. So, and then his third part is, where are you going? What's the destination? And I put down the itinerary that we had canceled when the pandemic hit. So we never went around the Mediterranean like that. But there it is. There's a course that a ship would have followed, or planes would follow. So Lewis says, you have to follow the rules of the road to get along with others. You have to make sure that you're working internally. You have to know how your internals work. And then you have to know where you're going. All of these 3 parts make up the moral life. Now, for those of you who had the article, comments, questions about that? Anything else you want to pull or remind us from the article? Because I'm really narrowing it down to just a short portion of it. John took notes on his article. Oh, okay. So, am I making a good connection between my 3 buckets and Lewis? I think it makes sense to me. Here are the 3 reasons that we give. We give reasons of authority, the heart, and outcomes. And you'll see as we move forward, I'm going to label these a little bit differently, but this is where we've This is what we've talked about so far. And I mentioned that I was going to end with, if you were sitting in this class at SPU or Northwest, where I'm teaching this right now, or my high school classroom, you would say, Christian ethics so far? I think we can make a case. I think we can make a case that these three buckets work for everyone. And then how do you decide what is your authority? What influences your heart, and what influences how you weigh outcomes? Micah 6:8 says, "He has told you, O man, what is good. What does the Lord require of you? To do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God." My illustrations here are not in the order that's in the verse. My illustrations are in the order of the three that I've talked about so far. So to walk humbly, what does that mean? Except it means you're submitting to someone or something. You're following the rules. Now, I have to tell you this. The pictures of this man kneeling, it's a Caravaggio that I got to see in Rome in October. And it's such a powerful painting. The man has dirty feet. He's coming and he's kneeling. Now he's kneeling before the Virgin Mary, so it's very Caravaggio, but he's walking humbly and he's submitting. And when we face an authority, that's the question. Are you going to play by the rules? Are you going to submit to the rules, or are you not? So the whole category of I'm going to do such and such because of what the rules say, God says, yes, walk humbly. Love kindness. We're going to comment at some point about the whole love question. Jesus says, I'm going to sum up the whole law. It's all love. Love God, love your neighbor. Now, I know it's not that simple, but Jesus says, love kindness. God's word says love kindness. And then do justice. And the do justice part is, what result am I looking for my neighbor? Am I looking for what outcome am I looking for myself? But more than that, what outcome am I looking for others? That, my friends, is where we're going to end today. And next week, we're going to look at something that I call the ethics triangle, which is going to build on this. Any last comments, questions, rebuttals? Thanks for your attention. Thanks for your participation today. Lord bless you.
Thank you.
Amen.